Isn't it interesting that just as the Senate holds its secret leadership vote, Congress schedules a bombshell UFO hearing? But what they didn't count on was our military sources confirming this isn't just another distraction. This is the real deal. Former DNI and new CIA Director John Ratcliffe is about to blow the lid off of an 80-year cover-up. Non-human technology, recovered craft, biological evidence. It's all coming out. And with Trump's promise of full disclosure, the deep state's carefully constructed UFO narrative is about to shatter. While we're talking about shocking revelations, here's one that will really get your attention. Most guys think their testosterone is being drained by aging, but there's something far more sinister at play. One common food, something that you've been told is healthy, is actually crushing your T levels. Head over to sculptnation.com/NNN to watch V-Shred's free video exposing this testosterone-killing food. This one simple change could transform your energy, your motivation, and physical performance. The truth about this food will shock you. So click the link below or just visit sculptnation.com/NNN after this report. Now, 4 days ago, the news broke. We posted on our X account. And if you're not following us on X, you need to follow us. Brian, do we have any X-Files music for this segment? Wouldn't that be great? Congress is about to expose unidentified anomalous phenomena in a bombshell hearing, so set your clocks. November 13th, 11:30 a.m. at the Rayburn office room. Brian, we need to stream that. Mark it. Let's get it done. National security, border chaos, and foreign threats are all on the line. The truth might finally come out. 15 hours ago, Representative Tim Burchett, this is his official X profile. Arrogant bureaucrats in D.C. spend your money and withhold information on UAP while our nation's best pilots give a different story. How does the government expect to gain our trust when they don't trust us with the truth? Here is Representative Tim Burchett on News Nation just hours before the hearing.
As it, the best pilots in the world that are our pilots are telling us these things are flying in close proximity to their aircraft. I had one tell me this thing flew 14 feet away from my canopy, and he held up his hand like that as it is to mimic where it was. So, and then we have these bureaucrats arrogantly tell us that we don't know what we're talking about, and then when we ask them about specific instances like the one you're showing right there, they look down at their papers and say, we have no information on that. So it's a completely compartmentalized, arrogant bunch, and I'm hoping President Trump fires a lot of people and puts some people in there that trust the American public with the truth.
Now, I was listening to the Patrick David podcast, the PBD podcast. He had a guest on. I forget the name, but he was one of the people in charge and still is in charge at the Pentagon of all the alien stuff. Amazing podcast. I encourage you to go check it out. Maybe I can find it in a little bit later. But let's get into some more of the information regarding this. Inside the Beltway, UAPs return to Capitol Hill with joint House hearing on Wednesday. This is 1 day ago. UAP James Tim Gallaudet says the Department of Defense and the intelligence community has evidence of a new nature of reality. The American public has a right to know, and he will be testifying at the House Oversight UAP hearing.
Let's not disclose the classified information technology-wise that we're learning about UAP. I'm okay with that. We don't want that to go to the American public or our adversaries. But the American public has a right to know the new nature of reality we know, and that the Defense Department and the intelligence community has realized and has evidence of. That's not fair to the American public or the global citizenry at large. So I think this is what has to come out. Let's not disclose.
So he doesn't want to disclose the technology because of the sensitive nature with weapons and whatever. But he does want to disclose the nature of this reality. Now, there's a lot of debate. Are these aliens? Are these demons? Is it Nephilim? What is it? You know? Could God create a race that we don't know about? Certainly can. He can do anything. So there's, of course, the spiritual implications, religious implications for these things. Doesn't change the fact that Jesus Christ died on the cross, rose again on the third day, and is my Lord and Savior because of his spilled blood. That doesn't change that fact. Okay. Tim Burchett dropping legislation that will protect UAP whistleblowers. We need people who have the courage to bring truth to light, and they need to know they'll be protected when they do. So Tim Burchett's really the tip of the spear in this entire operation for disclosure. And he wants to protect these whistleblowers, so they will come forward. Now, Dr. Disclosure. This is the written testimony of Luis Elizondo for the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation. This is his written testimony. You hear it now. You're going to hear it first before that actual hearing. So I'm going to tell you, this is what he's going to say. Greetings, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grotham, ranking members Connolly and Garcia, and members of the committee. It is my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomena, formerly known as UFOs. On behalf of our brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who have awaited this day, thank you for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to protect my secrets as sacred and will always put the safety of the American people first. That said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Nowhere was this more important than in the aftermath of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. Luis Elizondo, I think this is the guy who was on the PBD podcast, but he says UAP are real, and the advanced technologies are not made by our government or any other government. That's what we got. That is the advance testimony you heard here first. 14 hours ago, Representative Anna Paulina Luna says potential Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been a huge advocate of UAP declassification.
As the Secretary of State, he's actually been a huge advocate in declassification of that. But I think that if you look at the world, if you look at the galaxies in just a bigger picture, I don't see how there's not life on other planets. I'll just leave it at that. But you guys have to tune into the hearing tomorrow. It's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty wild. Here we have a longer segment with Representative Burchett. And he states that Trump will disclose it. Trump will reveal to the American people the existence of UFOs. In my conversations with President-elect, I'm convinced that's what he wants and that he trusts the American public. Let's listen to this.
Republican Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, he introduced the UAP Transparency Act. You will be at this hearing. I appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Thank you, ma'am.
I want to start with what you expect to hear this Wednesday. Do you think that Americans will learn new information about UAPs, or are you expecting massive revelations on Wednesday?
I think we're going to learn some things. It's peeling back the layers of an onion. The one thing I think that will happen eventually is President Trump will move towards total disclosure. And that's what's going to have to happen, because it's just going to be some person's word against another. And, we have these government bureaucrats who keep saying that they don't exist, or as you quoted the one just then, saying that we misinterpret. Well, they're misinterpreting then because their own people are saying we don't know what the heck these things are. And the best pilots in the world that are our pilots are telling us these things are flying in close proximity to their aircraft. I had one tell me this thing flew 14 feet away from my canopy, and he held up his hand like that as it is to mimic where it was. So, and then we have these bureaucrats arrogantly tell us that we don't know what we're talking about, and then when we ask them about specific instances like the one you're showing right there, they look down at their papers and say, we have no information on that. So it's a completely compartmentalized, arrogant bunch, and I'm hoping President Trump fires a lot of people and put some people in there that trust the American public with the truth.
Yeah, you are hoping he fires some people. I appreciate you mentioning that. I do want to ask, President-elect Trump has said in the past that he knows things about UFOs. What are you expecting? What will you be watching from him? Are you expecting full transparency under his new presidency?
I hope so. That's the signals I've been given. And in my conversations with the president-elect, I'm convinced that that's what he wants and that he trusts the American public. It's just like the Kennedy files. They tried to set up Schumer tried to set up this thing and everybody embraced it, and they trashed me because I said it's not going to work because it mimics the Kennedy files, which happened before I was born. I'm 60 years old, and yet we still don't know what happened there. Those files are still closed, and the people associated with it are dead. So we've got a lot of things to get to. I don't know that this will prove too much other than that there's more out there and that we're not telling the truth. The admiral that will testify, he has some very compelling evidence that he wants to talk about. And there's no reason in the world for a man like that to lie, because if he, all he's going to do is be ridiculed in the public and by his former peers. So this is completely,
Yeah. I mean, they face ridicule.
Yeah.
And to your point, it is, these whistleblowers are at risk. They receive threats.
Okay, so that guy right there, Luis Elizondo, he was on the PBD podcast. You need to listen to that whole thing. It will blow your mind. Okay, there's about a minute left of this.
For coming forward. I do want to ask you, Congressman, I know you introduced the UAP Transparency Act. You've been championing this for some time. We find ourselves in this moment. Many perceive political upheaval in our country. We are facing foreign wars that need to be solved. People still feeling the pinch of the economy and inflation at home, the border. Why does this in particular matter to you so much?
Well, it's in the purview of the committee. We don't deal with a lot of those other things in oversight. We oversee government and cover-ups. And why in the world would we not want to know what we're spending tens of millions of dollars on? The federal government tells us they don't exist in one breath, but then they won't release files. And when they do, they're redacted heavily because they think we're ignorant and they're arrogant. This has everything to do with Washington. It's power, influence, overconfidence, and arrogance, and money, of course, is all wrapped up into this. And if we had an hour, I could probably just scratch the surface. But I'm hoping we'll get to the bottom of this. Chairman Mace is going to be an excellent chairwoman, and she will. I believe she will not put up with any garbage, and I'm looking forward to the committee.
Republican.
Well, it's going to be lit. It is going to be lit when this thing happens. So Trump's new CIA director, former DNI John Ratcliffe, he's another pro-UAP disclosure pick. Frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified, and when we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have technology for. I want to get this information out and declassify it before I left office, but we weren't able to get it down to an unclassified format that we were able to talk about quickly enough. Well, now he's going to be the head of the CIA. Buckle up, folks. The disclosure is coming. Here is, this was published a day ago. This is, I believe, from the previous UAP hearing. CDR David Fravor testified at the last congressional hearing on UFOs, and now he will have a second chance. If you're interested in the ground truth, watch this clip intensely. Listen.
technical report.
What is shocking to us is that the incident was never investigated. None of my crew were ever questioned. Tapes were never taken. And after a couple days, it turned into a great story with friends. It wasn't until 2009 until Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program in the Pentagon led by Lou Elizondo. And there was an unofficial official report that came out that's now on the internet.
George, do you have a technical report on the Tic Tac UFO generated by an intelligence agency that is not classified? And if you do, why can't you give that to Commander David Fravor? Why can't you give that to Congress?
Well, we did make public the first report that Dave has been referring to, made that public in 2018. That was just the start. There was a later analysis, 140 some pages, that was done for OSAP. I have seen that report. I'm not saying I've got it, but I've seen it. It is not classified. It's highly detailed about the capabilities of that craft based on sensor data, witness statements, a whole range of sources of information. And yeah, it would be great. It should be public, but it's not mine to release. Information gets shared with you under conditions sometime. And if you either have to follow those conditions or burn a source. And once you burn them, you'll never get information again.
So we've got more. This is going to be a huge disclosure. 11 hours ago, Truth Poll on X. You're about to find out that Roswell UFO crash was absolutely real. They've been reverse engineering UFOs since then while lying to the public for more than 8 decades. Here's former DNA John Ratcliffe, who's now been selected as CIA Director, making comments regarding David Grush's testimony about NHI biologics.
3 UFO whistleblowers. They testified before the House Oversight Committee this week. Here's a bit of that. Watch.
Did you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
John, you and I have spoken about this in the past. This is pretty extraordinary stuff. Unidentified flying objects have been seen. Biologics have shown non-human body parts, and people may have been murdered because they tried to hide this. What can you tell us as the former director of national intelligence?
Well, Maria, you and I had a conversation more than 2 years ago about this as I left my position as the director of national intelligence. And I said, look, the government has more information than it's sharing. And that was, I thought that a report that was going to come out after I left would have more transparency, which was needed. Unfortunately, the Biden administration made the decision to really not reveal much. And now you end up with House Republicans having to have these public hearings to talk about more of this information. I will say this, I believe there should be more transparency on this issue. But not full transparency. I mean, the primary role of the federal government is to provide for the common defense. And, we don't share all national security information with the American people. But the government should have done a better job of putting out some of the things that you and I talked about, that I said, look, there are things that we can't explain, and that there are more sightings than are being reported. And, had the government managed this a little bit better, it wouldn't be as controversial.
Do we know where these UFOs are coming from?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of things that are unexplained. I mean, Maria, I've gone to the edge of, talking about information that's classified. I can't go over that line. This current administration would love nothing more than for me to trip over a classified information line. I just think that we could have put more information out to talk about all of that.
The fact that these conversations are being had on mainstream media is pretty wild. I mean, this is stuff that you normally see like in the corners of the History Channel or something like that. But now we're going to have a second hearing on this.
Engaging.
This is Ross Cauthart. Expect the CIA Office of Global Access to be forced to admit within months.
See why admitting the existence of a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet, something that is categorically denied by the Pentagon. And remember that in a few months' time when the Pentagon is forced, and I suspect it will be, into a groveling admission. How are they going to justify their behavior? How are men, primarily men, and officials in the CIA's Office of Global Access going to explain the fact that they have egregiously, criminally, illegally lied to the public and to the president and to the Congress about a simple thing like the existence of a non-human intelligence? I don't...
Wow. Oh, we're not done yet, folks. Take a look at this. This is footage from September 10th, 2014 in San Diego, California, captured by a DoD contractor, Rick Ybarra, over his home in San Diego. It is one of, if not the clearest UAP videos to date. This may be the footage in the public domain of a crystal clear UAP. Look at that. Look at that thing. What? I mean, zooming into that, like, what is going on here? And it's got these, like, appendages. I mean, could it just be some kid flying a drone? I mean, I don't know, man. Former Air Force intelligence officer David Grush reportedly had top secret meeting with Wall Street bigwigs and CIA officials where he claimed his sources worked on a 40-foot UAP. This appears to be the Joe Rogan podcast, maybe?
People. Are we alone? Well, the answer is we're not alone. And I know that with 100% certainty, which as an intel officer, you never say 100%, but all things pointed towards, based on the people I talked to, like Harry Reid, and I use him as an example, but I talked to the highest of the high people you could possibly talk to, if you catch my drift. So unless all of them are lying and they're covering up something else, which I don't even know what it would be at this point, because the phenomenon is real. It's been going on for thousands of years. People have been seeing strange things, and not everybody's mass hallucinating.
Wow. Couple more to get in here. This is, okay, here's Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump speaking with Lex Friedman.
Videos. A lot of people are very interested in the footage of UFOs. The Pentagon has released a few videos, and there's been anecdotal reports from fighter pilots. So a lot of people want to know, will you help push the Pentagon to release more footage, which a lot of people claim is available?
Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I would do that. I'd love to do that. I have to do that. But they also are pushing me on Kennedy. And I did release a lot, but I had people come to me and beg me not to do it. But I'll be doing that very early on. But I would do that.
A lot of people.
So Trump is stating not just disclosure on UFOs, but full disclosure on Kennedy. And I believe it was Mike Pompeo at the time who was pushing him to not disclose any information. Well, Mike Pompeo is far away from this administration this time around, thank God. Let's see what Tucker Carlson had to say. This is back in December of 23 when he spoke on the redacted.
Fanciful ideas. The second thing that bothers me is the UFO story. And the more you dig into that and talk to people with actual knowledge of it, again, that's another story where there are some, fanciful ideas floating around that are just, there's no evidence that they're true. But if you talk to people who, have actual knowledge of it that they gathered themselves, there are parts of that story that I do not understand at all that are really, really, really dark. It's so dark that I, haven't told my wife about it. I mean, I haven't verified any of this, but this is not just stuff that I read on the internet. I know you all are very, very grounded in that story, so I think I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But there's some stuff there that's just like, man, I'm not even sure what that means. There's a spiritual component there that I don't fully understand. So yes, that story bothers me. And I think, last thing I'll say, that one of the reasons that we've had all these disclosures and all of these, 10 whistleblowers at this point, and it hasn't really become front page news. Part of it's suppression. Parts of the government don't want you to know about it, but part of it is the public can't deal with it. It's too far out. The implications are too profound. And I understand that, because I've heard things where I'm just like, oh man, I don't even really want to know that, honestly.
Deeply disturbing stuff. Forget like saucers and technology. It's deeply disturbing stuff that I haven't even told Natalie. Yep. I agree with you. It's so disturbing. Exactly. I can't even tell my kids. My kids ask me different stories about it, and I won't say it because it's so dark. It's so dark.
I totally agree.
Miles is watching. So.
Okay, Miles, if you're watching the show, Daddy's not going to tell you about that part of the UFO stuff and what's going on with the government.
Can I say one thing? They've known clearly. This is, I think, established, and I feel comfortable saying this as fact. The U.S. government, these are real, whatever they are. They're not human. And the government has known that for a long time, possibly going back to the 1930s at least. And of course, there's tons of evidence in the written record, in the physical record, in paintings, and in literature, that people have been seeing and interacting with these things for a long time. So we know that. But the justification one often hears is, well, the government, various presidents who have been read in, not all have been, haven't wanted to disclose this because it would scare people. And I've always thought that's bullshit. You're hiding a crime, which they are, by the way, in my opinion. But I do think there's a sense in which that's not totally crazy. Like, there is some stuff, if it's true, and I'm kind of thinking it may be true, that's so radical that, as we both said, we don't want to tell the people we love most about it, because, why would you, disturb someone like that? So I kind of get that. I hate to admit it. I'm not arguing for hiding things. I believe in the truth and I believe in disclosure, but I understand the impulse. Like, holy smokes, this is heavy. You know what I mean?
And the government's involvement in it makes it even heavier, because then you realize the complicity.
Exactly.
Of it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about the same thing. I can tell. Okay.
Yeah,
excuse me.
Should I go?
No. This is what we used to talk about in commercial breaks all the time.
Commercial breaks all the time. Oh, and here is accountability is coming. Here's Representative Nancy Mace. This looks like it was the previous hearing.
Do you believe that officials at the highest levels of our national security apparatus have unlawfully withheld information from Congress and subverted our oversight authority?
There are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not sure what they've shared with certain Gang of Eight members or et cetera, but certainly I would not be surprised.
Wow. Continuing to withhold. Here, okay, so this is another Admiral's bombshell UAP testimony that we will hear at the hearing. Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet reveals shocking 2015 incident where USS Theodore Roosevelt carrier group faced multiple near collisions with UAP, triggering an urgent safety alert. This is his testimony, the written testimony that we will be hearing at the hearing. Confirmation UAPs are interacting with humanity came for me in January of 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast that included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. This exercise was overseen by United States Fleet Force Command, led by 4-star Admiral, who also served as my superior officer. During the exercise, I received an email on the Navy's secure network from the Operations Officer Fleet Force Command. The email was addressed to all subordinate commanders, and the subject read, in all capital letters, urgent safety of flight issue. The text of the email was brief but alarming, with the words to the effect, if any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We're having multiple near midair collisions, and if we do not resolve it soon, we will have to shut down the exercise. Attached to the email was what is now known as the Go Fast video, captured on the forward-looking infrared sensor on board one of the Navy F-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects, because DoD's policy is to rigorously deconflict such demonstrations with live exercises. I was confident this was not the case. The next day, the email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients without explanation. Moreover, the commander of the Fleet Forces and his operations officer never discussed the incident again, even during weekly meetings specifically designed to address issues affecting exercises like the one in which the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group was participating. This lack of follow-up was concerning, as the Navy's chief meteorologist at the time, my primary duty was to reduce safety of flight risks. Yet, it was evident that no one at the flag officer level was addressing the safety risks posed by UAPs. Instead, pilots were left to mitigate these threats on their own without guidance or support. I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within a special access program managed by an intelligence agency, a compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not read into. Last year's UAP hearing before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is not only being withheld from senior officials and members of Congress, but elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. The remainder of my government service, including my time as an Undersecretary of Commerce for NOAA Administrator, this incident disturbed me. It highlighted a dangerous culture of overclassification where even pressing safety of flight issues could be swept aside under the pretense of secrecy. Having never signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding my UAPs, and now as a private citizen, I have become an advocate for greater transparency from the U.S. government and continue to speak out to validate the credibility of witnesses and other former government and UAP whistleblowers. Wow. And this is the man who will be testifying. Here we go. Folks, whatever happens tomorrow is going to be explosive. So buckle up. So the hearing on UFOs that we're anticipating, it's about decades of lies finally being exposed. Rear Admiral Gallaudet's testimony about a new nature of reality isn't hyperbole. It's a warning shot across the bow of the deep state's massive cover-up. From Roswell to today's military encounters, the truth is finally emerging. But here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Donald Trump's promise to release the UFO files is connected to tomorrow's hearing? Do you believe that Donald Trump will release the files? What do you expect those files to contain? Share your thoughts in the comments below.